So we're on the topic of Aikyam, oneness. In the last class, we talked about the example of the face reflected in the fun house of in the various mirrors. It might look elongated or fat or so on. So Atma Chaitanyam, this pure consciousness, when reflected in the reflecting medium of the various upadis, may seem inferior or superior simply because of the reflecting medium. The difference is only seeming, and oneness is the fact. What is the seeming difference because of? Because of these mere distortions of the upadi, the limiting adjuncts. And what were they? The avidya upadi in the form of shariratrayam acts as a limiting adjunct for the jiva, and the maya upadi in the form of the prapanchatrayam acts as a limiting adjunct for the Ishvara, Paramatma. We saw that the text told us avidya upadi sannat. Apologies. Where did you lose me?
It was right in the beginning.
Oh, okay. Let me continue again. So I was saying that the text told us avidya upadi san atma jiva iti uchyate. So this atma with the limiting adjunct of the avidya upadi, which is the shariratrayam, is called jiva. And maya upadi san atma paramatma iti uchyate. And this, one second. And this same atma with the limiting adjunct, this far superior limiting adjunct, but still a limiting adjunct of the prapanchatrayam is called Ishvara, right? Even when you see all the glories of Ishvara, this amazing world that we live in, the whole cosmos, all these beautiful planets and stars which last billions of years. Many chapters in Bhagavad Gita will talk about all the glories of Ishvara. Yet, this is all still a very limited aspect of Brahman from the limiting adjunct of the manifest universe. So when you remove these upadis, what you are left with is the attributeless Brahman. And Vedanta wants you to inquire beyond all these superficial differences, to stop clinging to these superficial distortions, because these distortions are the cause of samsara. Vedanta is asking you to understand the essence. You may think I'm but a tiny wave in the ocean. In the grand scheme of things, this body-mind sense complex is as temporary and as transient as that wave which emerges and fades. Now, we looked at several objections that the student might have, which obviously some of you probably have too. The author is now going to explain how the equation of oneness can be understood by another angle. On your page 19, you can repeat after me. Iti chena
Iti chena
sthula sukshma sharira bhimani
Sthula Sukshma Sharirabhimani
Swampadavarchyartah Upadi vinirmuktam Samadhi dasha sampannam Shuddha chaitanyam Tvampada lakshyartah So the author is now introducing two technical terms. They're called Vachyartha and Lakshyartha. So I'll get to what they mean. Let's look at why do we speak. We speak to meet you all again. We speak to communicate, right? So we speak to convey something, and we use words to give meaning to what we want to convey. And every word reveals a certain meaning. Every padam reveals a padartha. When I say banana, you will all probably have an image in your mind of what this banana is. If I say, bring me a banana, you will know what I'm talking about. So every word conveys a particular object. The object is called Varchartham. It's the primary meaning, the dictionary meaning of that word. But however, we also use words to convey only part of the object and not the entire object. So if I said I am eating a banana, you will obviously understand without really having to process it that I'm not eating the whole banana, I'm eating the flesh of the banana. I would have removed the peel and I would have eaten just the flesh of the banana. Similarly, when I say I, this could be the whole Stula, Sukshma, Karana Shariram, and the consciousness pervading it, the three bodies and the OC. But if I said I'm feeding the baby, you will understand that I'm feeding the baby with my hands, and I'm probably feeding the baby, putting the food into the baby's mouth, right? So there is, in my use of the word I, or on the use of the word baby, you're only taking some part of the meaning, not the whole. Similarly, when I say I am angry, you know that it's just simply the mind experiencing a feeling of anger. In all these cases, we are using the lakshyartham, the implied meaning. Secondly, this meaning of word can also be literal or figurative, right? So we don't always, so the eating the banana example, it's you can take it as a figurative example. I'm not literally eating the whole banana, but just some part of the banana. Or if I said, if I go to a restaurant and I tell the waiter I will have a dosa, the waiter will know that he has to bring me that plate of dosa with sambar, chutney, and whatever else goes with it. He knows I didn't mean I just want a dosa. So the waiter, at least hopefully an intelligent waiter, takes the implied meaning of it. I did have a situation where we went to a restaurant and ordered a lime soda. And what we got was a soda, a bottle opener, a lime, a knife, and salt on the side. So it can happen. But an intelligent intellect, a refined intellect, will take the implied meaning. And taking this implied meaning is something our intellects learn to do. When we were young, and my sister was just about 3 or something like that, my grandmother told her, go drop this plate in the sink. She said it in Telugu. It literally translates to go drop it in the sink. And a few seconds later, we hear the plate breaking in the sink because my young sister took what she was told very literally and dropped the plate in the sink. So this is something we all learn to do. You will probably face, so those of you who've had kids at home will probably see this happening. Even this association of I being this body, is a learned association. I was spending some time with my friend's 2-year-old recently, and he got hurt and he started crying and he said, the baby is hurt. So he still doesn't have this association of this baby being him and his name and all these other associations. So I think babies perhaps are born enlightened in a way, and this ignorance is also learned. It's possible. So all these associations we have right now about who I am, they're all learned associations. So and there was one point where we didn't associate. So as babies, we didn't associate it with, I'm Spandana, I'm a girl, and so on. It's even when you show mirrors to babies, they won't recognize that image as themselves. Psychologists will call it that they develop this sense of identity later in life. Vedanta will say they develop this sense of wrong identity later in life. So we learned this identity, and we can learn to drop this identity and attach ourselves with our real identity, which is that Shuddha Chaitanya. So it is said, iti chet, if asked thus, no, tvam pada varchata, the direct meaning of the word tvam, stula sharira abhimani, does not mean stula sharira, including the other two shariras. The direct meaning will not work because three bodies or prapancha are different. Hence, we should not take the contextual, hence we should take the contextual meaning. What is that? The author says, upadi vinirmuktam. Vinirmuktam means segregate or set aside this upadi, this limiting adjunct of the reflecting medium. So the process of discrimination and viveka will get us to arrive at the Shuddha Chaitanya, the unmixed consciousness, which is the Tvam-pada Lakshata, which is the implied meaning of the word Tvam. After filtering, Samadhi Dasha Sampanna. So at the time of separation, you should know which part to keep and which part to take away. Otherwise, it will become like that story in the Puranas where this Bhakta was so mesmerized by Lord Krishna that she, when she peeled him a banana and gave him the peel instead of the flesh of the banana. So when you do this separation, you should know which part to take and which part to keep. The body is just matter. Mind is just matter. Intellect is also just matter. They're all Jada, insentient. And this insentient thing is not me. So finally, this verse fully says, if it is so, if that is your argument, then no, there is no real difference. The immediate meaning of the word you is the one who is identified with the physical subtle bodies. Then it says it's not the correct thing. The implied meaning of the word you is pure consciousness, the one who is free from limiting adjuncts, the one who obtains during the experience of subject-object resolution. Therefore, in the Vachyartha, there is Veda, there is difference, but it is only a seeming difference. When you remove the Upadi, there is no difference. The difficult part, of course, is there can only be a figurative separation. The separation cannot be actual. In some texts, we give the example of a red-hot iron ball. Tough part is like if I wanted you to give me just the redness of the ball, you can't. You'll have to give me the whole ball. You cannot separate the redness from the red-hot ball. If I want to feel the ball without the heat, again, you cannot separate. You will have to wait for the ball to cool down, and then it's no longer a red-hot ball. But while that it is still in that state, you cannot separate it. You cannot separate the heat principle from the ball, from the redness. It's all together. And so it is with this consciousness. We're only, if you remember the 5 capsules of Vedanta, we said that the surviving consciousness after the death of the physical body is not available for perception without the reflecting medium of the body. So that is the challenge we'll have to overcome when we do this separation and claim this Shuddha Chaitanyam as ourselves. There are times when we are free from upadhi, such as in deep sleep or in moments of pure joy. What remains is that Shuddha Chaitanyam. This Shuddha Chaitanyam, which is the implied meaning or lakshyartha of the word Tvam. So similarly, the author will now tell us the implied meaning and the said meaning of the word Tat in Tattvamasi. Right, so of course you all know now what is in Tattvamasi, thou art that. What do we mean by thou and that? Right, so when I say Tattvamasi, you are that, I don't mean your body sitting here or your intellect or your emotional personality. I mean you, the pure consciousness. So when the teacher says Tattvamasi and the student has to understand Aham Brahmasmi, again, Aham is only the pure consciousness. You cannot claim any of these personalities you associate with as Brahman. A nice cat on my window. So the superficial nature is called Ahamkara. The real nature is Atma. And this whole spiritual journey is going from Ahankara to Atma. We have to remember that we are not humans having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings temporarily having a human experience. The author continues, please chant, Evam Sarvajñatvadi Vishishta Ishvara Tatpadavarchartah
Ishvarah Tatpadavarchartah
Upadi Shunyam
Shunyam
Shuddha Chaitanyam
Shuddha Chaitanyam
Tatpadalakshyartah
Tatpadakshartah
Evam cha Jiveshwarayoho
Evam cha Jiveshwarayoho
Chaitanya Rupena
Chaitanya
Bhede Bhadaka Bhavaha Thank you. So it says Evam in this manner, Ishvara, the Lord, Sarvajñatva Vishishta, one endowed with omniscience, the one who's now we know is the four entities, the three prapancha, which we labeled RM4, 5, and 6, and the OC, the original consciousness pervading it, Varchyartam, the implied meaning, the said meaning, Varchyartam of Ishvara is the total body, the total mind, the total intellect at the cosmic level, right? But the Lakshyartam, in the context of the Mahavakya, we should not take the total Ishvara. We shouldn't, even in the Stula Prapancha is Jada, the Sukshma Prapancha is Jada, and the Karna Prapancha is also Jada. So the implied meaning of Paramatma or Tat is again only the Shuddha Chaitanyam, the pure consciousness, the consciousness which is undistorted by the reflecting medium, the superior reflecting medium of the Prapanchatraya. The author concludes the verse by saying, Evam cha, in this manner, Chaitanya Rupena, in the form of original undistorted consciousness, Jiveshwaro Abeda. There is no difference between the Jivatma and Paramatma. Abeda, no difference at all. Just like the face may look distorted looking at the different mirrors in the funhouse, but the original face is not changing at all. It's appearing different because of the different upadhis. Similarly, the distortions of the Jivatma and Paramatma are temporary, incidental, and apparent. The OC, the original consciousness or Atma, is always the same. The face, which is appearing in the different mirrors, is always the same. It doesn't undergo any change. It exists even if there is no mirror to reflect it. And that consciousness you are. Author says, Badaka Abhava. The contradiction is absent. No contradiction exists. Badaka is any factor which negates a previous contention. We looked at this word once before when we were talking about the various pramanams. So what makes something a pramanam? A valid source of knowledge. It had to be self-valid by itself. And it didn't need any other pramanam to prove it, right? That's what it means by self-valid by itself. And it was also said that when some other pramanam can prove it wrong, then it was an error. So when you mistake a rope for snake in the twilight, it was badaka, an error. When the light becomes brighter, you see the rope for what it is. And what is the badaka here? The vritti. So the vritti born out of this pramanam will negate the snake in the same place, right? So that's also another reason why we study this mithya world. It's to understand that this Brahman is not somewhere else. When you negate the world, where is Brahman? It's right where the world was. When you negate the three bodies, this body, mind, intellect, not being me, this emotional personality, not being me, where is Brahman? Brahman is still there where you were thinking this body mind was. Brahman is everywhere. So that's also the point of studying the mithya world. So we again say, we again and again that it's not, we're not completely negating it in the sense of we are different from this. We are always saying that we are distinct from this. Sometimes, of course, this badita will not go away with sense perception alone, right? In the case of the mirage water, when you went closer, the mirage disappeared. Or in the case of the rope snake, when the light became brighter, it disappeared. If you know by now that the sun is constant and stays constant and the earth is revolving around it, right? Yet you will see this beautiful perception of a sunrise in the mornings, and you will see the beautiful perception of the sun setting in the evenings. That's a very enjoyable perception. So even if now you have the knowledge that the sun actually is not rising or setting, your sense perception will still show you that. So you can enjoy that sense perception that you're getting while your knowledge is still firm that the sun does not actually rise or set. This is an example of how knowledge can clear a confusion, even if your senses say otherwise. Similarly, the conclusion that I'm of limited knowledge, limited power, limited spatially, that is standing between you accepting the statement of Tattvamasi, this can only be removed by Shastra Pramanam, through knowledge. And hence we're on this inquiry. So have trust, have faith, and keep inquiring, keep asking your doubts, seeing if your intellect is satisfied, and this confusion too can be removed. So at the end of all these verses, so you can say, I am God, if what you mean by I is the original consciousness, right? This is called the Mahavakya Jnana Aikya Dhyanam. This is the knowledge of oneness born of the study of Mahavakyam. With this, we finish the fourth topic of Aikyam, the central topic of Tattva Bodha and all of Vedanta. We will, of course, keep coming back to Aikyam again and again throughout our study of Vedanta, right? In study of Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, and so on. Is when we understand this Aikyam now, we talked about how the Jiva and Ishvara is the same. One might also wonder, is Advaita asking you to stop worshipping Ishvara? But we have to understand that the scriptures are not denying duality. They're recognizing the notion of duality. They're just simply not taking it as the ultimate. Hence, the scriptures will also prescribe dualistic devotion at a certain stage of development until that feeling of separation goes away. Scripture recommends all kinds of practices like puja, japa, yoga, and so on, which are steeped in duality. So all these practices prepare the mind, prepare the inquirer for the teaching which unfolds. You could say, I am everything, or the Lord is everything. The first one is knowledge, and the second one is bhakti. And even if after the knowledge you want to continue bhakti, it's fine. Just like even after the knowledge of the sun not really rising or setting, you can still enjoy a sunrise and a sunset. There is nothing wrong with devotion. I talked before about several great sages who wrote many proses of devotion, like Ramana Maharishi or Shankaracharya. It's also, bhakti is also important through in all the preliminary stages of Vedanta, this inquiry for preparation, because there is no surrender without knowledge. And surrender is nothing but the elimination of ahankara. The elimination of ego is knowledge. And bhakti helps with this surrender. First, you surrender your possession, your mamakara, like all this sense of minus. This belongs to me, this relationship belongs to me, and so on. And then you surrender yourself, your ahankara. To surrender oneself, you need knowledge. To claim the immortal I, you will have to stop clinging to this mortal body. In Vedanta, while performing all these preparatory steps, one should have the attitude of non-duality, right? So even when, if you feel ready, even when you're worshipping a deity or a murti, you will have that knowledge. You could do the physical act of worshipping, but you will know that if I'm worshipping Shiva, I'm worshipping that eternal consciousness principle, which is represented by Shiva for me right now, right? So you should have this vision of, he is indeed I, and I seek this identity. This attitude is the best devotion, the scriptures will tell you. Whatever action that the inquirer takes for self-purification, that leads to self-realization is always welcome. So the next question might arise is what happens when I gain this knowledge, which I will get to shortly. Any questions in this topic of Aikyam so far, and what we talked about, Lakshyartha and Vachyartha? Okay, let's continue then. At the end of your page 19, Evam cha Vedanta Vakyaihi
Evam cha Vedanta Vakyaihi
Sadguru Upadeshena
Sadguru Upadeshena
cha Sarvesha Api Bhuteshu
Sarveshvi Bhuteshu
Yesham Brahma Buddhir
Kesham Brahma Buddhit
Utpanna
Prutpannam
Te Jivan Muktya Ityarthaha.
Jivan Muktat Ityartha.
Thank you. The verse says, thus by the words, teachings of Vedanta imparted by a competent teacher, Sadguru, those in whom the knowledge of Brahman in all beings is born, they are Jivan Muktas, which means liberated while living. The author is telling us this knowledge is highly beneficial. It's not just some scholarly knowledge to know, but it is also very practical because it gives us what we are looking for: happiness, freedom from suffering, a feeling of completeness. This is called moksha or mukti. In the first class, we looked at the several benefits of why we study Vedanta: Jignasa Nivritti, Vidyananda Prapti, Karpanna Nivritti, Agata Nivritti, and Dakshata Prapti. There's a cessation of this curiosity to know, the joy born out of knowledge, freedom from despondency of the worldly fleeting objects, freedom from shocks, gaining in efficiency in everything that you do. Enjoying all these benefits in full measure is what moksha is. We saw how when we looked at the different purusharthas or goals in life, can you hear me okay? I think my internet is a bit unstable. Can you hear me? Can someone unmute and let me know?
Yes.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Okay, great. I was getting a message that my internet's unstable. Great. So ultimately, we saw that whatever purusharthas one is looking for, be it money or career or relationships, a kid, for your kids to do well, we're all ultimately looking for happiness. So whether one knows it or not, moksha is what everyone is seeking. A Vedanta student simply has clarity on what exactly is it that they're ultimately seeking. That's the main difference. So the author gives the mode of undertaking this study in this verse. He says, never try to study this or gain this knowledge by yourself. Don't do independent self-study. Self-study will not give you moksha. In fact, it might be counterproductive because the knowledge of the Vedas is vast. There are several interpretations. There is a systematic manner in which this knowledge has to be revealed. We had come across Tattvamasi, but when given the concept of this reflecting medium and the original consciousness pervading it, and the distortions perceived by the reflecting medium, you read you are God and you might end up chasing some kind of omnipotency. There are many yogis, there is frustrated yogis who get attached to samadhi. And they think being in samadhi is the state of freedom, or what will give them the state of freedom. And they get frustrated every time the samadhi is broken. There are also many yogis who in deep practice awaken certain siddhis, special powers. And this, in fact, becomes the most difficult stage to cross, because instead of trying to let go of ahamkara, let go of this ego, you start getting attached to an ahamkara with even superior attributes, which would be even harder to let go. So therefore, the author says this knowledge has to be gained through scriptures and a teacher. Why scriptures? Because we saw that Shastra Pramanam is the only thing which can give you this knowledge. And why teacher? Because and why a Sampradaya teacher? Because they have gone through the systematic process of study and they've been exposed to how this knowledge has to be revealed. So that's what Vedanta Vakyam means, with the help of Vedantic statements. Even the teacher should not give their own teaching. They must make the use of Vedantic statements, especially Vedanta Mahavakyas like Tattvamasi or Aham Brahmasmi, making use of scriptural statements and Satguru Upadeshena cha, with the help of systematic teaching through a Sadguru who has effective method of communication, has the methodology of transmitting this difficult knowledge. That's how the study should be undertaken systematically. It should be undertaken for a sufficiently long length of time if you want the ultimate benefit promised by it. And ideally under the guidance of a single teacher or sampradaya. Right. So any teacher from the same sampradaya is also fine, because anyway, we say in this lineage that the guru is the knowledge, not the person speaking. That's why all of us, including Raviji, we call Acharya. We don't call anyone guru. So you would have seen how this author is systematically developed the text, right? We saw who's an adhikari, then we explained different components of an Atma, and then we finally came to Atma. And we also saw briefly how duality is a step in the inquiry to non-duality. So with the help of teacher and Shastra, Sarveshi api bhuteshu Brahma buddhir utpanna. Buddhir here means jnanam. The knowledge of Brahman will arise through Guru Shastra Upadesha. The knowledge of Brahman refers to, of course, the original consciousness which is present in every living being, every medium, every body. That is what is meant by Sarveshu api bhuteshu. While the original consciousness is the same, because of the different reflecting mediums, it appears different. One who has understood this knowledge is said to have aparoksha jnanam. He is aparoksha jnanam is said to be a jivan mukti, liberated while living. So what is aparoksha jnanam? It is different from any other knowledge, right? It is so there are three kinds of knowledge which typically exist. So you have a knowledge of an object far away, remote. So for example, which is not available for direct experience, indirect knowledge. For example, your friend goes to Australia and she tells you there are these big animals, big brown animals who have like these huge tails, and they carry their young in a pouch in their belly, and they kind of look like this big rabbit, and they're called a kangaroo. So this is Paroksha Jnanam, which is indirect knowledge. And then you might one day go to Australia yourself and you see this animal hopping about and you say, that's a kangaroo. So that's the Pratyaksha Jnanam, direct experience, knowledge of an object which is like in front of you. It's available for direct experience. It's available through sense perception, taste, touch, feeling, hearing, or sight, right? Oftentimes, it can also be a mix of both. However, this self-knowledge is different from both. And how is that so? Because both these Paroksha Jnanam and Pratyaksha Jnanam are knowledge of an object, right? But self-knowledge is of a different category. I, the self, am not an object at all. I am not, neither am I remote in any way. I am the subject. And this self-knowledge is and falls in a different category called Aparoksha Jnanam. And that's what this author means by Aparoksha Jnanam. So, which is why we also say that this knowledge cannot come in any way through any kind of experience. So you cannot have this experience, any kind of Kundalini awakening or Samadhi experience, which will give you this knowledge, right? All these can be supportive in some way, but that knowledge has to arise from the Guru Shastra Upadesha. This, we explain the process of exactly how it awakens, but there is this Akandakara Vritti of Aham Brahmasmi, this undifferentiated thought of Aham Brahmasmi, which arises in the mind in the waking state. And that has the capacity to remove any ignorance that you're left with. So that's what the author says means by Aparoksha Jnanam. He says such a person who has this Aparoksha Jnanam will become a Jivan Mukta, liberated while living. And what does Jivan Mukta mean? I realize that I am the original consciousness temporarily manifesting in this body, in a distorted form. This body, the reflecting medium, will perish, but I, the consciousness, am eternal. Like in deep sleep, there is no fear of sleeping because there is no duality. So while it might sound scary to give up an association with this body-mind, but it's like that. There will be no fear. There will be no fear of mortality or insecurity. And this insecurity is the seed for all kinds of emotional problems that we face in life, like raga, dvesha, moha, lobha, which is desire, aversion, delusion, greed, and so many others, right? Like fear, envy, all these problems which make us cling to money, to people, possessions, all these problems are a result of this fear of mortality and insecurity. A Jivan Mukta has waken up from this ultimate dream. They've waken up to the reality of the transactional, fleeting world. Hence, life becomes a leela, a play to be enjoyed, and nothing has the capacity to give any suffering anymore. Just like if you were to wake up in your dream that you have every night and know that this is just a dream, there will be no tiger which can frighten you, or there can be no pot of gold which will generate any desire in you. You will know that this is all a dream, but you can still enjoy the play of it all. That's the Jivan Mukta. But maybe it was just a very brief introduction. So then the student continues to ask, to explain who is Jivan Mukta. Any questions?
Just want to ask something,
Yes, please.
Hariom. From a point of a seeker, can we say it other way around? That we should know what is dual situation, Advaita. And know what is dualism.
What is Dvaita, yes.
So that we could be Advaita. Realizing should be of the Dvaita.
That's
so that we
correct.
could be, it should be other way around. We should, isn't it?
You need both.
No, I think so. It shouldn't be the realization of the Advaita. The realization should be of the Dvaita. And so that we could be Advaita.
Yes, I'll respond. So, both. So, dualistic inquiry is a step in our ultimate inquiry. So, because otherwise you will end up with, if you simply inquire into the duality and you negate all the duality, you stop there, you will end up where the Buddhists did, at shunya, at emptiness, right? So you negate everything that I am not or that I am distinct from, but there is something which remains. After negating everything which is available to your sense perception or elsewhere, there is something which remains, and you have to name what is it that remains. So Buddhists will refuse to talk about what remains. I mean, they will say, some schools of Buddhists will go as far as to say, what remains is too subtle to be named. We can't really talk about it. But Advaita says, you must talk about what remains, because this liberation can only happen when you identify what remains and claim it as yourself. So this association with this mortal body is only possible when you realize that you are that immortal. Else, how will you drop this association with this mortal body? Otherwise, you will become, if you simply drop the associations, certain Neo-Vedantians will also say destruction of the mind. We don't want to destroy the mind. Mind is the instrument you have to understand your true self, right? It's the only instrument. It's also where the ignorance exists. We simply want to destroy the ignorance which exists in the mind. So you're right in saying that we are dealing with duality, and it's very important to understand what is duality, to understand what is it all that I am distinct from, which is why we study all this. It's a very important step in this inquiry. But ultimately, Shastra will name what is that ultimate reality that I am. And it's absolutely critical to understand that and claim that as yourself. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat. Thank you.
Okay. What's the doubt?
There'll be more. I mean, in the course, there will be more.
Okay. Please contemplate on it. And of course, I'm not expecting you to be enlightened through this answer, but if there's any specific doubts which come up, you're very welcome to post it in the group.
I have another question.
Yes,
not very related, though, Spandanaji.
Sure, go ahead. As we're in the last 10 minutes, I don't mind taking some
questions. When we are on a path towards knowledge, we gain knowledge, what role does bhakti play?
Sorry, it was not very clear. Could you please repeat?
I said when we are on a path towards jnanam, to realize ourselves, how do you approach bhakti in that path? How do you inculcate bhakti?
So I will give you a brief answer. You will get a very detailed answer again in Bhagavad Gita. So there is stages of bhakti that everyone goes through. And like I said, bhakti is important because it's kind of a surrender.
And also, is it necessary?
It's very necessary. So when we talk about the different parts of yoga, when we talk about Raja Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, they are not, or Karma Yoga, they're more like starting points. But none of them can actually exist without bhakti, right? Bhakti is even Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge that we are pursuing right now. How can there be knowledge without bhakti? How can there be knowledge without devotion? You need to understand the wonder of what is Brahman. You need to understand that everything that I'm seeing in the world today is Brahman, right? And that absolutely wondrous, infinite, pure principle of consciousness, which illumines everything, which makes everything possible, is Brahman. And that Brahman I am. So there is a devotion in that. There is a lot of love in that journey to that realization and in that realization. So bhakti is very important. So Bhagavad Gita will tell you in more detail about the stages of bhakti that go through. Most people start with devotion to one. I mean, for many people here, like for me, I didn't worship a particular deity, but I had the concept of there is something which created this world, and okay, for now, let me call this God. That's what God was for me when I was younger, right? So for many people, God could be Shiva, Vishnu, Jesus, and so on. And it's useful to have like a higher power to look up to in the times of difficulty, to have faith. And also most people start with this one form of the God. And from there, as one evolves spiritually, they come from this Eka Ishvara Bhakti, like this one, worshipping one form of the Lord, to Aneka Ishvara Rupa Bhakti, like worshipping multiple forms of the God. And so that means that, okay, till now you thought only Shiva was God. From there, you come to accept that the Vishnu that your neighbor is worshipping is also God, right? And then you say the sun is also giving representative of one aspect of Ishvara. So I can accept sun also as the God. I can accept multiple forms of this God. And from there, you come to Vishwarupa Bhakti, which is understanding that everything you see is the Lord. So the trees you see, all the people you meet, everyone is this God, right? So then you won't have any problem with anyone because you're able to see the divine in all of them. And that is a practice that, because we're all also on the path of Chitta Shuddhi, right? Of purifying the mind, that can be a beautiful practice. So whoever you have a difficult relationship with in your life, you can try to see the divine in them. What is the divine aspect that they have? And so you finally come to Vishwarupa Bhakti, not finally, just before finally, you come to Vishwarupa Bhakti, which is still Saguna Ishvara, like this Ishvara with all the gunas, with differentiations. And then you come to Nirguna Bhakti, which is devotion to this consciousness principle without any gunas. And that's a stage where you start contemplating on all these aspects of Brahman as yourself. I am eternal. I am all-pervading, right? But when you have to be careful that when you come to this last stage of bhakti, the I has to be very clear in your mind, right? You should have very clear notion of what I is. It's that Shuddha Chaitanyam. It's not this body, it's not this mind, it's not this intellect, it's not any of these things. So that's where devotion comes in. So if you look at the path of Karma Yoga, which is suggested for purifying the mind, Karma Yoga is basically, I devote all my actions to the Lord and accept whatever result comes back as Ishwar Prasada, because so I put in my best effort because I'm dedicating all my actions to the Lord. So again, there you need devotion, right? So Bhakti Yoga, of course, is all full devotion. Even Raja Yoga, you need devotion. Why would you do any of these practices prescribed in the Raja Yoga, like meditation or asana or pranayama, if you did not have the aim of chitta shuddhi in your mind, right? So you could be doing asana as a physical exercise and it'll give you some benefits. But if you want the ultimate benefit of a seeker, you are devoted to, there is a devotion involved there to commit yourself to these various practices. Does that answer your question? So don't be quick to reject bhakti. I can understand that question quite well from a personal point of view, because the path of bhakti was the most difficult for me when I started on my spiritual journey. I did not, but that's because I didn't really understand what devotion really meant. But when that devotion started getting invoked in me, that's when the real shift in being able to understand this knowledge and assimilate this knowledge really happened for me personally. So it's good to cultivate that bhakti, and it's okay if you want to cultivate non-dual bhakti. Right? No one's asking you to bring back, once you know there is no Santa Claus, you can't pretend there is a Santa Claus anymore, right? So no one's expecting you to look at a Shiva Lingam and think there is this man who wears tiger skin and dances somewhere in the Himalayas, and no one's expecting you to worship that Shiva. You're simply worshipping one aspect of this wondrous creation, which is so difficult to understand. You're worshipping the destruction principle, right? So it's useful for you to understand that destruction happens for renewal. Destruction is required for the renewal. It's an important aspect of creation. So you could worship Shiva from that angle, or you could worship Shiva from the angle that this is simply one aspect of this absolute consciousness. And that absolute consciousness I'm trying to understand as myself. Shivoham. So even when you do, actually, this was a very lovely practice. Even if you go to a temple, which I was very resistant to before, but now I go if there is a beautiful temple, or it might please someone I'm with. I'm happy to go to a temple, and there's also people leave behind certain energy, like places of meditation or places of worship leaves behind certain energy. So it's nice to also conducive for yourself also to be in that energy. So if you go to a temple and you do that pradakshina, initially, how do you go from duality not to non-duality? So instantly, when you're doing the pradakshina, you can say Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, meditating on Shiva. And at some point in that pradakshina, you can change to Shivoham, Shivoham, that Shiva I am. So that's a very live example of how in that moment you can go from dualistic bhakti to non-dualistic bhakti. Yeah. Thank you. Let's do the ending prayers as it's 9, but we can, if there's any more questions, we can take that too. Thank you so much. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Om Tat Sat. Thank you. Have a beautiful week.
Thank you, Spandana. Thank you.